Hello, my name is Ilona, and in this video I want to talk about being uncomfortable, especially when you're growing spiritually. When you start listening to yourself, things will change, you will change, and of course, there will be a reaction from the outside world because you're changing. And I will explain this with an example just to show what can happen. And it's very important to understand the more we live from our hearts, the more we live in connection with God, in connection with our soul, the easier it will get. But most of us are still not, well, in a way, that connected or still have trouble listening to our intuition, to our hearts. And then there will be a period, like a transition period, that will be more difficult. I've experiencing it right now for a couple of months now, especially with everything around us. The frequency is getting higher around us and it triggers us. Now, some people choose to ignore it. I try to open myself and really welcome all these changes. But sometimes even I am like, why is this still coming up? I thought I already settled this. And it's really about very deep healing that is going on. And sometimes you may not even know where things are coming from, or maybe it's from a past lifetime, but it's important to embrace it and really, well, open yourself up to it. So, being uncomfortable, what does that mean? Well, we are raised, at least I was raised in a society and, of course, in a family that people did not want to become uncomfortable. So, people would avoid things, especially with feelings, emotions. People would just step over them. You know, I come from a family like, well, come on, you need to do something, move on, forget about it. It happened, let go, and just do what you're supposed to be doing. There was a lot of hard working mentality, so a lot of focus on results. So the entire emotional part, like I've mentioned before, I had no idea how to deal with it, and it was making me very uncomfortable when things would come up. So I kind of just pushed that aside. I developed an eating disorder, and other people will, of course, develop other things. Like I've mentioned, you have these coping mechanisms. I made another video about that. And then it kind of starts that you avoid feeling pain, feeling anger, feeling frustration. It of course depends on how you were raised. But we all have things in our shadow or our baggage that we don't want to take a look at. And if people say something, something gets triggered, we kind of avoid it. We can react very aggressive or very like a victim. You know, we have all these coping mechanisms, how to deal with it, except that we're not dealing with the actual pain. We're not dealing with the actual anger, frustration, fear. Fear is a very important thing as well. Shame. It can be all kinds of emotions that you're feeling or you've pushed away and you don't want to feel. If we just look at our society, people do everything to keep themselves occupied, to keep themselves distracted, just as long as they don't have to connect with themselves. It's almost like we do not want to be uncomfortable. So if something happens, a child falls, the child will get a cookie or candy or just to keep them happy. It's about keeping people happy instead of learning to deal with that uncomfortable part. That we sometimes have to deal with certain emotions. Sometimes it doesn't feel right and that we need to cope with that. But most of us I've never learned that. I'm learning now. I'm teaching myself, so to speak, to really feel this, whatever it's coming up. Can be any kind of emotion or feeling, to just feel it. I do have to say, if you're just starting with this process, take your time with that. What I always do is just close myself off in sort of, how do you say this? Go in a room where I'm closed off. You know, I usually go to my bedroom. I would lay down on my bed and I would feel something's not working right, or someone said something and I felt something or I reacted to it. I just kind of go back to that and then see what's going on in my body. Where do I feel that? What do I feel? And I would just breathe through it. That's what I do. And of course, if you're just starting, you know, you don't have to do this for hours on end. take your time with it, because it's something different and your body will react to that, because it's a different way of dealing with things. I've noticed, especially when I just started, that I would get more, how do you say that, binges afterwards, because my body wasn't used to doing that. So it kind of got a little shock, like what's going on. And of course, when I'm emotionally shocked, I would eat. So understand then when you're changing that, you start to deal with that, you can get a relapse in whatever coping mechanism you have. That can be shopping, you start watching movies, drinking, there are all kinds of things. So it's very important, I didn't know that at the time, that if there is really an addiction going on, I do suggest you get help for that, because it's very important that you don't relapse then. To me, I was already working with it, and it didn't overwhelm me for some strange reason. I felt like, okay, I need to do this. And in time, it just got better and better. The binges would disappear. It wouldn't be my first reaction for certain turmoil. If I felt emotional turmoil, I wouldn't start binging immediately. I would first feel, and the more I did that, the better I felt, the stronger I got. So that was a process. And I very rarely have binges now anymore. I'm very happy about that. But it's important to understand that when you start moving, you're changing things in yourself, especially feeling things and getting uncomfortable, your body will react. But now I want to talk about, of course, when you're changing dynamics in relationships. If you start changing, so for instance, I will, just an example, like you have two sisters, and the older sister always kind of taking care of a younger sister, and the younger sister kind of expects the older sister to do, be responsible for her, because that's how they were brought up. I'm not going to go in how that happened, but just they have that dynamic that the older sister takes care of the younger sister. Well, the older sister is starting to change. She has that pleasing, how do you say that? She wants to please the younger sister. She wants to take the responsibility. But at a certain point in time, she kind of gets burned out and she doesn't want to take responsibility for her younger sister anymore. Her younger sister is an adult and she should start living her own life. So this older sister is going to get in a process of letting go of the younger sister and letting go of that responsibility. But the younger sister is, of course, used to a certain dynamic. She will consciously or unconsciously will start to feel that her older sister is stepping away from that. So she can get angry. She maybe start guilt tripping the older sister. She's trying to get back into that dynamic if she doesn't pick it up. It's always up to the person if they're going to go with the change or not. But most of the time, I've noticed myself, a lot of people are not that conscious of what they're doing. So the younger sister could very easily start claiming the older sister again. And it could get very difficult for the older sister. So she could feel the guilt and the sense of, well, I am responsibility. Maybe their parents have died and they are the only ones they've got, two sisters. So it's very important for her to really step into her own authority, deal with all these uncomfortable feelings that she's feeling, but not giving in. And of course, there can be relapses in that as well. It's a process. So sometimes she may still give in to something and later on, like, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have given her money for that, or she should have been able to do that herself. So it's very important when you start changing things, especially with family, well, colleagues maybe even, or friendships. If you start changing, people will react. And especially people that have not done any self-reflection could really start claiming you. It's going to be a period that's going to be very uncomfortable. You can get all kinds of things thrown at you because they want you to step back into that dynamic. That's being uncomfortable. So you can not only be uncomfortable with all these feelings that come up, or looking at the relationships, or looking at the dynamics that are going on, the patterns that are going on, but you can also get from the outside world that people want to get you back into what they are used to. And it's a change, and you really need to understand that you're doing this to spiritually grow. If you keep, in this case, if this older sister keeps the responsibility for the younger sister really doesn't have a chance to grow up. She doesn't have a chance to really step into her power. That's what you're actually giving. If you step out of certain patterns, doesn't matter what kind of patterns they are, but if there's a pattern that doesn't feel right to you, that doesn't resonate, if you have a very balanced friendship, of course there's nothing wrong with that. But if there's a friendship where you feel you're the one always giving, or this person is kind of stepping over your boundaries, in what way, it can be in all kinds of ways, you just don't feel right about it anymore, then it's important to step back, let the other person have a chance to maybe change things or not, and if they don't, you have to move on. You have to make a choice whether your spiritual growth, your connection with yourself and with God, if that is more important than staying in a relationship that's really keeping you in a certain frequency. That is a choice you will have to make. And sometimes I can understand that people will be like, you know what, these are my family members, they are too important to me, I choose to remain in this situation. Of course, everyone is free to make that decision, but it is about your spiritual growth, and it is about growing, and it's also about, if you grow, you give an opportunity to people around you, to your surroundings, to grow as well. That's the beauty of it. And you will add to this collective we're all connected to, and bringing in new energies. So to be very honest, it is so important to choose yourself, to choose your own road, to choose your spiritual growth, but ultimately that is your decision to make. But like I said, it is important to understand that you will be uncomfortable in certain parts, and that you will have to just, how do you say it, woman up or man up. And if you really want to spiritually grow, you have to face those emotions, those feelings, and you will have to face people maybe try to guilt trip you into things. People, especially when you try to change the dynamic will be even more prevalent. You will really see what's going on. And of course, you can sometimes fall back. That's all right. And like I said, if you need help, professional help, get professional help, especially when you're in a very toxic relationship or family, or just in a toxic situation. It's very important that you get help. But things, when you're changing, it's going to get uncomfortable. But if you're open to that, and I have to say, the more I do this, I've been doing this for quite some time now, the more comfortable I get with it. That sounds very strange, but the more comfortable I get with it, and the easier it gets. It's just like you start healing quicker or faster. It's like you really open yourself up and embrace everything. And by doing so, you're just making yourself stronger. And like I've said, the more you do these things, you can really, it will get easier. But you have to understand that, especially when there are patterns that go very, very deep, it can get very, very tough. So maybe you're very loyal to your family, and you really get in a position that you really have to make a very, very difficult choice that is necessary for you to go to the next level. They call it testing. I'm not sure if it's testing. I think it's more reacting. You change things, especially patterns that run very deep in certain families. The reaction you will get will be tougher. And that's just a way to get you more in connection with yourself. So I want to leave it at this, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.